Welcome back, College Baseball Central fans. Season 3 started off well last week. We're doing episode 2. It's the ACC preview show. We're very excited. I've got several co-hosts today. I've got Noah Darling. How we doing, Noah?
Outstanding, Mark. It's great to get on that ACC train again. It feels like every year we think about the ACC and, yeah, good conference. And then we take a real look at the ACC and say, wait a minute, is it time that they pass the SEC? I don't know.
Deep dive every year. We have this conversation. I got to wait till they perform in the postseason better. That's the big key. Can they win the title? Monty, welcome. Monty Taylor. How we doing today?
Doing pretty well. I'm ready to talk some baseball, some ACC baseball. I've been waiting.
It's time, buddy. It's time. We're getting there. AJ Sessions, his first show of the season. How's it going, buddy?
It's going well. I had to break out my Wake Forest hat. We're talking about the ACC, so I have to represent the class of the ACC.
Fair enough. And Jake McKeever will join us shortly. He is having technical issues, so he's having Jake problems. No issues there. We're going to dive right into the ACC. So, as we do on every preview show, we start off with our rankings. So, we start with the ACC. It's going to be 14 through 1. We don't do conference specific as far as Coastal and Atlantic. What we do is we break down the 14 best teams in our poll, and we do it from 14 to 1. And then we go through and we're going to do the conference player of the year, the pitcher of the year, coach of the year, newcomer of the year. And then I direct some questions at these guys individually that some of you have reached out and asked me to ask these guys. So we're really excited about this show. We're going to get right into it. Number 14, we've got Pittsburgh. Now, Jake was supposed to take Pittsburgh, but with his issues, I'm going to jump right in here and take this Pittsburgh team. I'm going to be honest. This is a hard sled this year for Pittsburgh in the ACC. There's a lot of talent in the ACC. They went out into the transfer portal, and they just grabbed everybody that they could grab that was ever in the state of Pennsylvania, and they brought him back to Pittsburgh. They said, you're a local guy. You're coming back. One of the best guys that they brought in is sophomore transfer, Jake Kindrow. He's coming from Tennessee. He's probably going to start at shortstop for them this year. He's got a lot of ability. He didn't get a really big opportunity there at Tennessee with other guys ahead of him there. They're also bringing in a bunch of guys. They're bringing in Tyler Bish, Anthony LaSala, Ryan Zuckerman. They're bringing in guys that are trying to build this program, but they have to do it from the transfer portal because they really didn't get a lot of freshmen coming in this class. It's going to be interesting to see if this team can get outs in the ACC. They don't have a ton of returning pitching. They don't have a ton of arms there. I think that they're going to hit just fine as far as this conference goes, but pitching is going to be the biggest issue that I see with this team. Moving forward, we got Pitt at 14. Again, tough sledding here for them moving forward. Noah, number 13, Notre Dame. Tell me about this ball club because it feels a little bit the same as Pitt here where it's going to be some tough sleds.
Yep, eerily similar situation to Pitt. It just feels like we're finally seeing the reload after Link Jarrett has officially left. That one-year hangover period is officially over. The players who are on that Omaha team, they've completely gone. We've almost forgotten about Nico Cavadas at this point, but he's still a distant memory in my mind at least. The best returning player for Notre Dame, at least offensively, is going to be DM Jefferson, who hit 254 last year. That was the fifth best average on a team that wasn't very good a year ago. That's not a good sign for this Irish team this year. And on the mound is going to be Jackson Denny's. He has 13 starts, did a year ago, but he went 0-4 in those starts, so that's not really promising. It's going to be tough in Indiana for Notre Dame, but this is a program that I'm a believer in long term, but I think it's going to be tough sledding just like Pitt for now.
South Bend, Notre Dame, I got to tell you, not a fan. So I'm okay with you being a 13 in our poll here.
Okay, you said you weren't going to say any comments about Notre Dame, and
I know I was trying to stay away from it, but I can't. The Notre Dame faithful hate me for it, so I'm going to go ahead and lean on that still and say Notre Dame at 13. I'm okay with that. Number 12, Georgia Tech. AJ, I'm going to let you start in on this one. This feels like a different Georgia Tech program than we've seen in the past.
This is. And if I would have told you last year that they finished above 500, you'd be like, oh, that makes sense. If I also told you that a team ERA of 6.99, you'd be like, how'd they finish above 500? Well, the reason was that their opposing ERA was 7.08. So it was just slugfest 24/7. And then you turn, and a lot of those guys are gone. No Drew Compton, no Jackson Finley, no guys who are contributors on both sides of the ball. So what you have is talented youngsters, like CC Sabatia's kid, And Drew Burris, the highest commit to make, or the highest ranked prospect to make it to campus that isn't at Baton Rouge. And then you have a bunch of transfer guys. They're trying to grab experience from Fairfield, from Georgia State, both in the field and on the mound. They got Brett Thomas from South Carolina, who's going to probably try to be a starter for them. A lot of the guys they're grabbing, though, have been facing injuries their entire career. So if that pitching staff can't stay healthy, they're short as is. I think the offense will be led by Matthew Ellis. He's coming in from Indiana. He tied Kyle Schwarber's single-season home run record there. So it's going to be an offensively geared team again. Pitching staff's kind of hit or miss, and I think that's why we have them this low.
Yeah, when I looked at that Georgia Tech team here at 12, it was a lot of arm issues, right? And there's guys that come in that have some ability, but they've never been healthy for a full season. None of them have thrown over 50 innings in a season. So you're bringing in a bunch of guys that are going to try to eat up innings together. This might be bullpen by committee. Nobody knows how this team's actually going to put together and even where they're going to lean for starting weekend rotation. This might feel a little bit like Duke at the end of last year, where they just start throwing bullpen guys out there to start these games and seeing what they can do, but a lot less arm talent than what Duke had last year out of the bullpen. So Georgia Tech at 12, kind of foreseen as what we're looking here. Moving forward on to the next one here. We've got 11, Virginia Tech. Monty, I'm going to let you take this Virginia Tech team away because this feels a lot lower than what we've seen them in the past, but they feel like this might be a decline here.
It's tough to say. For me, between the two and the number 13 ranked teams, I see a lot of wide open area. To me, it's a little bit tricky to say where Virginia Tech's going to be because they have one of the best hitting infields in the conference. They're returning Garrett Michelle at first base, Clay Grady at short, Christian Martin at second, and Carson DiMartini at third base. And those are all really, really good hitters. So they haven't had a problem hitting in the last couple of years. The problem's been on the mound, and Drew Hackenberg's gone. Anthony Arguelles is gone. Griffin Green is out with Tommy John surgery. So you're depending on a lot of new arms to come in and try and do something. So their profile is a little bit similar to Georgia Tech on the mound, where they're going to give up a lot of runs, but they're going to score a lot of runs. So if they can get any sort of pitching, they could make some noise.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like Georgia Tech 2023, right? Like where they come out there and they're going to probably give up 7 runs a game, but they might score 10. So who knows what this team's really going to do. That infield is really, really good and highly talented there for Virginia Tech. I'm just worried them being able to get outs. Collecting outs in the ACC is one of the toughest things to do. And if you don't have high-end, front-end pitching, it really makes it tough. So Virginia Tech lacking. We're going to have to see if they can have some dudes step up. And maybe you got to find some Friday, Saturday guys that can actually get outs in this conference once conference play gets started. A lot of preseason, though, for Virginia Tech to get it right. So number 11, Virginia Tech. Moving on to number 10, Boston College. Noah, I know you were going to have Jake start on this one, but I'm going to let you start since Jake's not here yet. He's still having Wi-Fi issues. Let us know about this Boston College team here at 10.
Yeah, I think we're a little thankful that Jake isn't here for Boston College because he seems to take credit for founding the baseball team. If it wasn't for him, they would not have had a very good year last year, but they really, really blew up and got into that hosting conversation for a while. It's for the life of me, I can't remember. Did they host or not?
No.
They did not. They
host.
went to Alabama, didn't they?
Yeah.
That does sound right. Yep. They were in that conversation for a while, though, and they were saying there's no way that park can host. They would send him to Fenway or something ridiculous. I don't even know how that would work. But Barry Walsh is back for Boston College. He was not one of their top-of-the-line producers, but he still hit .314 and stole 14 bags along the way. Patrick Roche also back hitting .294. He started every game last year, and he's back as a senior. So that's going to be some valuable leadership for them. And then on the mound, I think John West is going to be the Friday night starter, most experienced guy on the mound. Outside of that, it's a little bit shaky for Boston College. But that's life in the ACC. I think you're okay with that if you're BC after the year you had last year. New coach coming in this year. We'll see what that looks like.
I can jump in.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say I can jump in for Jake if you want because
I
was surprised looking at their roster how many guys they did have coming back. Obviously, Joe Vitrano and Travis Honeyman are are gone. Those are big losses. But Cameron Leary, who's got a lot of power, is back. As Noah said, Barry Walsh, Patrick Roche, but you've also got Nick Wong, Vince Cimini. So you've got a lot of guys coming back. And then I really like this graduate transfer, John Collins at catcher. He might be able to be pretty big star there for them. But again, the pitching, other than John West, where are they going to find it?
Yeah, that's the thing. John West, 6'8", huge Friday night starter, right? It kind of trails off really fast after he comes out of the ball game. There's not a ton of bullpen experience. There's not a ton of Saturday, Sunday guys waiting. I am also excited. I know you mentioned catcher there. I'm excited for the freshman Austin Hartzell, who's coming in. Had a lot of comparisons to some quick twitch guys there. 6'1", 195, pretty athletic dude. Like to see him get some time in the infield. But Boston College is kind of a mystery to me where they're going to go other than John West. But having that Friday night starter locked in and set up, that's a big thing here in the ACC to be able to have your chance of getting wins on Friday nights there. So number 10, Boston College there. Moving on to number 9, NC State. Monty, I'm going to let you start here on this NC State team. They're very highly talented. They got a lot of guys, but let me hear about this NC State team at 9.
I realized, I was like, did I put myself back on mute? I really like this NC State team. I saw them in the fall, and they looked really, really good. Their pitching staff, they're bringing back all 4 of their top starters. That's Sam Highfill, if you guys recall who that is. He outdueled, was it Jack Leiter that he outdueled in Omaha? I can't remember which, but he went and was outstanding as a freshman there. He's back as a senior. And he had battled injuries for the last couple of years, but was back in the rotation by the end of the year. They bring back stellar freshman Dominique Fritton, who I believe is a draft-eligible sophomore. And then they've got steady guys in Matt Willardson and Logan Whitaker. The big problem NC State had last year is they only had 1 or 2 really good bullpen pieces. They've rectified that, brought in a bunch of talented freshmen and some transfers. So I really like their pitching staff. Now the big thing is on offensively, they lost Cannon Peebles to Tennessee. That was one of their best hitters. They lost James over at third base, LeJames Groover, Gino Groover. But they do have one of the best catchers in the country in Jacob Cozart. And he's going to anchor that offense. But the guy I was really impressed with in the fall was Garrett Pennington, a transfer from Wichita State. He just was absolutely outstanding. I think he's going to be an underrated transfer for them and a big piece of their offense.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting where they go because Jacob Cozart is a dude, right, at the catcher position. He's what the anchor that he's going to be the 3-hitter. He's going to be sitting in that place. Where do they go other than that? That's the tough spot there when we look at this team here. AJ, do they have other pieces that you think are coming in that are going to be really good to help this team? We know about the pitching. We know they're really good there. Tell us a little bit more about this NC State team, maybe on the lineup side.
I mean, my pick to click for them lineup-wise is Eli Serrano. He did very good year last year, but can continue to take that step forward. Noah Souls has always just been a good hitter. He'll be part of that key offensive core. But they're just so many freshmen who will get the opportunity to break in and kind of stake a claim to a position early because you're losing guys like Peebles and Groover. That you're going to have to lean on those guys, and the talent's there. Also, Chase Nixon might very well work himself into a starting role by probably the second weekend if he hits well.
Yeah. A lot of it's going to be opportunity, right? So this is a good chance for a lot of transfers and freshmen to be able to get the opportunity to play. Preseason is going to determine a lot of that. We know we're going to lean on Jacob Cozart looking at this team. And Dom Fritton, Logan Whitaker, great pitching staff. It's going to be great to see what this team can do, but they got to get some offense going if they want to compete in the ACC this year. So that's number 9, NC State. Moving on to number 8, Louisville. Monty, this team gives me headaches. I want this team to be good. I see this lineup sometimes, and I just want it to be really talented. I'm worried that they don't have enough on the pitching staff. But let me know about this Louisville team here at 8.
Well, that is the question. They're going to bring in some transfers. They do have Carson Liggett, so like you talked about with BC having that Friday night guy, you can kind of figure it out from there with Carson Liggett returning and being that Friday night guy most likely. But they are bringing in a couple of transfers to that rotation most likely, and they've still got some pretty talented arms coming in as freshmen. But the lineup, like you talked about, they bring back their entire outfield of JT Benson, Isaac Humphrey, and Eddie King Jr. Those guys didn't have the best seasons last year, but they are all very talented, so it's very easy to see them having a bounce back. I mean, Eddie King started off really, really strong and then kind of faded down the stretch. Benson was battling some injuries, and then Isaac Humphrey actually was pretty good. So you've got those guys. You've got Gavin Killen at shortstop. And then you've got, I believe his name, freshman Zion Rose, who's a top 50 recruit out of high school, and he could really make some noise. So the lineup is really going to help them compete in the ACC, and then how well they do in the ACC is, again, it's just pitching. A lot of these teams, that's the theme.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the ACC brought in pitchers from outside, right? So they're like, hey, where are we going to go pitching-wise, right? So everybody brought in all these transfers from all these JCs and lower D1s all over the place. I highlighted the outfield of Humphrey and King Jr., right? I said King Jr. has an outside chance of being player of the year in this conference. He has the ability to drive the ball to the ballpark, steal some bases, and be a legit contender for player of the year. They got to be great if they want this team to be good, though. That lineup is going to have to produce, and Humphrey did it last year, but they're going to have to be more consistent, especially all three of those outfield candidates for them to be good. And all those transfer pitchers are going to have to step up because they need more than Carson Liggett, who's had the 14 starts last year and was really, really good last year. So, number 8, Louisville, going to need a little bit more pitching, but let's see what they can do here in this bracket as far as ACC plays goes. We're going to move on to the top 7 here now. Number 7, Florida State, after having a rough season last year, Noah. Tell me a little bit about this Florida State team led by our friend Lee Jarrett.
Yeah, I know it's a little bit of a tough time on Tallahassee right now, but I know that Florida State fans are used to not being in the top 4 of anything right now, so I think they'll be okay. But I think Cam Leiter is going to be a big-time addition for Florida State on the mound. What Link's going to be able to do with him is just something that's going to turn into must-watch TV almost every Friday night down there, if that's where they stick him. And then Cam Smith, James Tibbs, and Daniel Cantu are going to be big-time pieces in Tallahassee, and I'm really, really excited to see what Link can do in year 2, because year 1 was such a letdown. We know that NCAA tournament streak is over with. It's time to start a new streak, and I believe in Link Jarrett because he was outstanding at Notre Dame, and I know you didn't really like him at first, Mark, but I know that we're both on board with what Link can do.
Listen, while he was at Notre Dame, I got to really like him during those press conferences in Omaha. I had to stop hating on him and talking to him outside the press conference. He's a legitimate, nice guy and a good baseball coach. I just didn't like him at Notre Dame. But now that he's away from Notre Dame, I'm all on that Link Jarrett bandwagon here. He seems like a great coach. I think that he's going to be able to turn this program around. AJ, pitching was a question mark last year. Hitting was a question mark. They really didn't have a lot to lean on. But they have a lot returning this year. Is that good or bad for this Florida State team?
It's never bad to return experience, whether it's successful or failure from last year. You either learn from failure or you build off of success. They have the opportunity to do both. They're bringing in a ton of transfers from either UCF or USF, just kind of siphoning off those schools, like Daniel Cantu, like Cam Leiter. But this is another school where, especially out of the bullpen, maybe even for that midweek starter, that third rotation spot, you're going to have a lot of freshmen battling for that position. It's open right now because there's not a proven guy. You have proven bullpen guys like Andrew Armstrong who can go and throw quality innings, but it's is he moving to the rotation? He's definitely one of their better options on paper, but we'll see how Link Jarrett wants to play it. And then Noah mentioned kind of the core offensive guys. I want to throw in Jamie Farrer there as well.
Yeah,
he's just a good pure hitter. Doesn't have the power as maybe a Tibbs or a Cam Smith, but he's one of the better pure hitters on that team. Just lengthens the lineup, and this is a team that maybe has a high ceiling and a very, very low floor, depending on how things unfold for them this year.
Yeah, Jamie Frere, I love that. 320 hitter, 7 home runs a year ago. This guy can really mash the ball into all yards. He's not going to hit the ball out of the ballpark, but he's a doubles gap guy. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can stretch that out for them, giving Tibbs a chance to hit the ball out of the ballpark and get some real RBI opportunities. Another pitcher I wanted to mention also, Connor Winokur. He's going to get some innings. I do believe they're going to move Armstrong into the weekend rotation. The way I look at it, he's either going to be that Saturday or Sunday guy, but I think Armstrong does get a job in the weekend rotation, but we'll have to see moving forward. That's Florida State at number 7. Lots of question marks moving forward, but we all believe Link Jarrett's got this team going in the right direction, at least in year 2 down there in Tallahassee. Another Florida team, number 6, Miami. We are all over the board on this Miami team. AJ, I know that you and I had them high, other people not so high. What do you like about this Miami ball club?
I mean, isn't Miami just a team that you look up every year and you're like, wow, they are overachieving from the talent that we see on the field? They don't have a ton of guys who jump out as, highly rated prospects coming out of high school, but then you look 2 or 3 years in and those guys have developed into good talents. Yeah, they're losing probably one of the most dynamic players in college baseball. But they have Blake Sear coming back, who is, I think, definitely going to help them. Just be an offensive cornerstone that you can ask the younger guys to fill in and build around, because they do have a ton of younger guys they're going to have to rely on. It's looking up and down that lineup. It's actually going to be probably 3, maybe 4 freshmen who have the ability to start, especially early in the year as they're trying to figure stuff out. But it's Miami. I think they're going to start off very hot early and then maybe fade late.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what this team does. They're returning Gage Zeal, Friday night starter, right? That's what we talk about in the ACC. You got to have a Friday night guy. They have that. He's really talented. 8-4 last year, sub-4 ERA, big right-handed arm. I'm excited to see him pitch on Friday nights. Beyond that, it's a question mark. Where are they going to go Saturday? Where are they going to go Sunday? A lot of young guys going to get opportunities. I am also excited for catcher Carlos Perez. I think that he has a breakout year this year. He's always been a defense-first guy. He's a really good defensive catcher. I think that he builds on his offensive momentum of last year, and he might get into 20 home runs this year. We'll have to take a look, though. It's just really going to depend where we're going to see with this Miami ball club. But it is a lot of question marks and a lot of freshmen out there. They do have the talent. They have the ability to be in there. I think Gage Zeal keeps them in ball games on Fridays. And you got to win Friday night games if you want to win weekend series here in the ACC. So Miami at 6, lots of question marks, lots of young talent. But we do have them all over the board from anywhere from 3, somebody had them at 3, all the way down to 9. So it's going to be really interesting to see here. Number 5, we've got Duke. Now, this Duke ball club is a conundrum to me. Monty, I'm going to let you break this one down a little bit for me. Duke at 5 here. They could be 1, they could be 10. I don't know.
Wow. Okay. Well, when they lost Luke Fox in the fall last year and Jonathan Santucci in March, they really had to scramble a bit and adjust the way they were doing things. And they were basically, starters were only going about 3 innings towards the end of the season, and then they'd really depend on that bullpen. And that resulted in getting a lot of experience for these young, talented arms. And now you've got Jonathan Santucci back, and he's a legitimate first-round draft pick. Fran O'Shell, who was a dominant co-ace of the bullpen, looks to be moving into that rotation. So you've got as good a 1-2 punch if O'Shell can make that jump into the starting rotation as you've got in the conference. Now, you've got a lot of talent. You've got James Talon returning as the closer, Andrew Healy, Aiden Weaver. Those are 2 guys who have really good stuff. Andrew Healy, a third guy. All those guys had some starting experience, even though they were only going 3 or 4 innings. So you've got that, and then you've got a really talented freshman two-way star in Kyle Johnson coming in who could also push for that. So you've got the deepest pitching staff, in my opinion, in the conference, even deeper than Wake Forest. Maybe not as top heavy as Wake Forest, but I think they've got the deepest pitching staff in the whole conference, and that's why I had them, I think, at number 2, because that pitching staff is just so deep. And they've got enough stuff on offense, I think, that really makes some noise. They loaded up with transfers. Wallace Clark from Oklahoma, going to be their shortstop. Bravo from Harvard, Zach Morris from BMI, Ben Miller at first base. So they've got a lot of good guys, but then they brought in a really good freshman class. I really like the Mason Winslow, who's a catcher by trade. He'll probably see some time at DH. So they've got a lot of really, really good pieces. I think the offense is going to do enough, and then the pitching is going to dominate.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Stone, best returning player, right, a catcher. So kid's not going to get a chance to catch many games, but there is a lot of talent there on this team, and they brought in a ton. Santucci coming back, I think, is the key, right? That's a Friday night ace that you're locking in the ACC. Noah, what else do you like about this team? We know about the bullpen. Anything else we want to add on to this Duke roster?
The day after the college baseball season ended, I made my Omaha 8, and Duke was one of those 8 teams, and I still have them as one of those 8 teams. I'm a massive believer in this Duke team, and I think Monty hit it on the head. Those challenges that they had to overcome last year have now made tough players, which is something I always say, that close losses make tougher players. I think that's really a brilliant phrase that you can kind of just spit at any time and not look like a total moron. But Chris Pollard is building a monster, and we've always kind of been waiting for Duke to break the ceiling and get to Omaha. We've seen them one win away now against Virginia and Vanderbilt in obviously 2 different years with 2 completely different teams. So this is a dynasty that he's kind of building where he now needs to take it to the next level and get to Omaha. And I think that he has some nice offensive pieces to go with it in Devin Obie and Tyler Albright coming back. That would be my only concern, is can they score those runs to compete in the ACC where you score a million runs, but they certainly have the pitching to shut some of those offenses down. It's going to be a great time to be a Duke baseball fan. Coach K, who? It's Chris Pollard.
This is a baseball school now. We're excited here for Duke at number 5. A lot of pitching, Duke number 5. Moving on to number 4, we've got Virginia. No, I'm going to let you start with this Virginia team. There's a lot to like about this team. They could be making a return trip to Omaha again. What do you like about this Virginia team?
The offense. It's Griff O'Farrell, Ethan Anderson, Jack O'Connor, among others. I'll let Monty go even deeper, as I'm sure he will. But the pitching is a question mark for me, because we saw it last year in that regional and super regional. Is okay, they can score runs in a hurry. It's going to be great, really fun to watch them until they go play defense, and all of a sudden the game's tied again. So that's going to be a little bit of a question mark for me. But as we all know, Brian O'Connor is a fantastic head coach, and he hasn't been to Omaha in a couple years now. It wouldn't shock me at all if Virginia was back in Omaha. Monty, have you bought your tickets?
Number
No.
4, Virginia. What are we thinking,
No.
Monty?
So like Noah said, you lose Kyle Teal, you lose Ethan O'Donnell, you lose Jake Geloff, but the offense is going to be just fine. They've still got Griff O'Farrell, who has somehow worked himself into the first round consideration for the MLB draft. Ethan Anderson, who's going to be shifting to catcher this year to replace Teal. Those 2 guys are going to anchor this offense, but then you're going to expect somebody like Casey Sauke, who had an outstanding freshman year in 2022, kind of a down year last year. If he can step up and provide some of that piece, he's going to be huge. The guy I'm really looking forward to seeing him take a step forward is Anthony Stefan. He basically tore onto the scene as the DH last year, about middle of the year, and was just outstanding. And he started to hit for some power in the postseason all of a sudden. Had a great summer in Summer Bowl, so I'm expecting to see him take a step forward. But I'm also excited to see 2-way player Kyle Teal's younger brother, Aiden Teal. He was hurt last spring. He's back. He's expected to be a bullpen piece and play some outfield. And he's got some legit star power. But to talk about that pitching that Noah kind of mentioned, is they do bring back Jack O'Connor on the mound. He's basically their main starter. That all the transfers they hit the window or hit lightning with last year, those guys are gone. So now he's going to be depending on a lot of those freshman arms from last year who didn't get as much experience starting outside of Jack O'Connor, but we're talking Bradley Hodges, Cullen McKay, Kevin Jackson, Evan Blanco. Those guys are really going to take the reins. And then the other big thing is Jay Woolfolk, who could have been in the conversation to be UVA's starting quarterback this past fall, opted not to continue playing football. So he might be moving into the rotation as well. Obviously, he faded down the stretch a little bit, and that played a big, big part in leaving Jake Berry out there to face Florida's lineup when Jake Berry was gassed, because Jay Woolfolk was also a bit gassed from having to do the two sports. So they have a deep pitching staff, but they don't have the starting experience. So it'll be interesting to see who can take that step to starting. So,
yeah, a lot of innings returning, right? So there's guys that got opportunities, but none of them were really in starts. I think you nailed it there with Jack O'Connor. I think he's the most experienced. I think he gets that opportunity. I have huge highlight on Cullen McKay. Big fastball, big opportunities. I think I'd move him to the great for this ball club. Number 3. That's number 4, Virginia. Number 3, UNC, North Carolina. AJ, I'm going to let you start with this North Carolina team. There's a lot to like here. There's a lot of talent coming in. There's a lot of guys that are returning. Tell us a little bit about this North Carolina ball club.
I mean, on the face of it, they might be returning the most production-wise out of any team in the ACC. It is, guys who you thought would have been gone by now or felt like they've been there forever are still there, And that's not even including the guy that we all know is going to be a first top 5 pick this year, Vance Honeycutt. They got guys coming back. Jackson Vanderbrake, who hit very well last year. Alberto Ozuna, who can drop 20 bombs this season. They have such a deep lineup. And then on top of that, they're returning a lot on the mound too. They don't have Max Carlson, who going into the year was kind of their Friday night guy, but didn't really perform like it. It was, the starting pitching really let them down last year. But they're returning guys with starting experience. They're returning guys who could step into the role of being a starter. One guy who I have my eye on is Matt Poston, just out of the bullpen. I think he has the ability to move up to be a starter. I don't think he'll take that chance. Apparently, Cameron Padgett's also been throwing very well this fall too. So look for him to get some opportunities. He got some looks last year, more of a midweek role, but there's a lot of experience coming back for them. Yeah,
a lot of talent, and they brought in some good freshmen there. But we'll talk about that here in a second. Monty, this UNC team, there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of things to like here. Tell us a little bit what you think on this North Carolina Tar Heel team.
I mean, yeah, they've got a lot of guys coming back. I was surprised to see how many guys were coming back. They're going to have it's going to be some interesting decisions to make on who's going to be where. You have a lot of depth at the corner positions, particularly with, and I think there was also talk about possibly moving Casey Cook to third base, but with, again, the logjam at third and first base, it might be best to leave him in the outfield where he's been successful. But Parks Harbor, the Georgia transfer, Alex Madera, he's a Arcadia D3 transfer. He's expected to be the starting shortstop. You're bringing back Hunter Stokely, Alberto Ozuna, and Johnny Castagnazzi, all those guys can play first base. So you got to figure out who's going to play where. It's really exciting, but I'm also really excited about the freshmen. They're coming in. Tomas Frick is a very underrated loss for them. Obviously, everyone's going to talk about Mac Horvath, but Tomas Frick was a really, really big piece of their team. But they're bringing in, looks like a freshman's going to get the chance to be their everyday catcher, and Luke Stevenson, really good looking freshman catcher.
Yeah, I have Luke Stevenson highlighted. Another freshman I want to see is the wiry left-handed Folger Boaz. he might get some innings there. He might turn into a Sunday guy, but I think that they're going to leave him in the bullpen. He's got a lot of good stuff there from the left-handed side. And, of course, big right-handed pitcher Jake Knapp. That's the big returner, right? I think that he's probably going to get the Friday night ball. He's going to give them an opportunity. They must be better in the weekend rotation than they were a year ago if they want to compete for an ACC title. This team just was not the same on the weekends as they were with their starting pitcher during the week. They need to be better on the weekends. Their bullpen was good. They have got to be better with their starts this year. UNC, number 3. Moving forward here, we've got number 2, Clemson. We're excited about this team. There's a lot to talk about, so I'm going to let Noah start here. Noah, dive into this Clemson ball club here at number 2 that we have them.
Last year, we talked about how it was going to be a really, really exciting year to watch Clemson with Eric Bakich and what he was going to be able to do. Cam Canarella has risen as a star, whether AJ likes that or not. Will Taylor and Blake Wright are also great players for Clemson. They brought in a lot of nice pieces, but then they also lost some players like a Billy Amick kind of a player. It's going to be an exciting time for Clemson, but you have to tread a little carefully with this team.
Yeah, there's a lot to like, but there's going to be some question marks. There's going to be some bumps in the road. Going to get this stuff figured out in the preseason here. Monty, tell us a little bit about your thoughts on this Clemson ball club.
Like Noah just alluded to, Caden Grice was their number 4 hitter. He's gone. He was also their Sunday starter. And then Billy Amick as the number 5 guy. Those are 2 big run-producing pieces you're losing. But I'm not sure who they've got filling in, but when you've got Cam Canarella, Blake Wright, Will Taylor, Jacob Jarrell, Jimmy Obertop, a transfer from Michigan. Those are guys that can step in. I really think Will Taylor is going to have a monster year, especially just like Jay Wolfick at Virginia. Will Taylor, no longer playing 2 sports, going to be able to put all his energy into Clemson baseball. And if he can get some of those power numbers up, he's going to be – I think he could be a player of the year candidate.
Yep.
Even though, similar to thinking about UNC last year where everyone was talking about Vance Honeycutt and then Mac Horvath had the monster year, it could be a similar situation for Canarella and Will Taylor.
Will Taylor is definitely on my highlighted players to watch for this Clemson ball club. Diving fully into baseball, I think this is going to be a great move for him. AJ, there's still more to talk about on this Clemson team. Tell us a little bit more about this Clemson ball club.
I mean, the combination of Cam Canarella and Will Taylor might be the most dynamic 1-2 punch, just with speed, power, hitting ability. Like, those guys have all 5 tools, both of them. You don't get a break. And then you get backed up with Blake Wright comes back. They are losing, like was already said, guys like Cooper Ingle, Caden Grice, Benjamin Blackwell, who's just experienced, been there, done that, knows how to just keep his head down. But there is just so much talent on this team, especially from the pitching side. Yes, you lose Caden Grice, but you return Austin Gordon, who coming into the year was your Friday night guy. You have Ty Olenchuk, who's shoved as a freshman against some very high caliber opponents. And then you go to the transfer portal and you get probably the most underrated steal, Matthew Marshall, who was just, I think he was SoCon pitcher of the year last year for Wofford. He was an absolute dude. And he's just going to be there to, hold up a spot in your rotation. He can shut down any team. It's an unbelievably deep team. They're well coached. They're probably going to be more likely to beat you 5-4 this year than 9-8. At least that's how they want to play. But don't be surprised if they put up some runs in a hurry.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's a good point. Is that I think they've improved vastly on the pitching side to make up for those losses offensively.
Yeah. One other guy I want to highlight too is freshman Justin Legarnik. He's been really, really good in fall ball, and I expect him, the left-handed pitcher, to get some innings there that are going to count in ACC play. Justin Legarnik, really good freshman coming in. But this Clemson team at number 2, very talented. They're just, a couple steps behind what we're going to call our number 1 team right now. in Wake Forest. Wake Forest, number one. I don't think this really surprises anybody in the nation. They might be the national number one seed. We're going to take a look here in a few weeks when we do our top 25 show. But this Wake Forest team is absolutely loaded. Monty, I'm going to let you start with this Wake Forest team, and then I'm going to move to AJ and Noah last.
So it's interesting how much they've reloaded because they did lose a lot of pieces, but everyone's talking about it right now. I believe MLB Pipeline just did their most recent top rankings, and according to what I can see, there's 5 first-round draft picks on this Wake Forest team. They are so good. Nick Kurtz is obviously the headliner offensively. He very easily could have been ACC Player of the Year last year, so he's probably the favorite this year. He's going to be a top 5 draft pick. But then they get Seaver King from Division II Wingate. I got my first look at him playing for Team USA, and the kid is he's going to live up to the hype. It's hard sometimes to see. You're like, what? Why is this D2 transfer getting so much hype? And it's legit hype. So they also bring in some underrated transfers in Tate Balestro, Adam Tellier, 2 other guys who can play in the middle infield. And then, of course, the pitching lab, the pitching. That's what we're going to talk about with Wake Forest. They get the bell of the ball, Chase Burns from Tennessee. He's looking to be a top 5 pick as well. And obviously Josh Hartle, we saw what he had last year. And then, of course, Michael Massey's probably sliding into that Sunday role. You bring David Falco from Maryland to kind of cover the back end of the bullpen. I am really excited to see this Wake Forest team.
Yeah, it's really cool to see how much they brought in and the amount of talent that is on this team. Now, can they win? Can you win with this, guys? That's the big key there. AJ, we're talking about a lot of new faces, but they're all really talented. How do we like this ball club?
I mean, on paper, you love them, but the game's not played on paper. There have been a lot of teams assembled that we've seen fall apart, whether it's not bonding in the locker room, whether it's, decimated by injury, which can definitely happen, especially in the college game where you can't go and sign new guys in the middle of the year. But there's just so much here that even if one of these guys has a down year, like you look at what North Carolina did last year when Vance Honeycutt wasn't what he was supposed to be. If Nick Kurtz goes out and isn't what he's supposed to be and puts up 75% of his production from last year, they're still going to be on the fringe for a top 8 national seed. They're not relying on 1 or 2 guys. There is so much here, and I think that's why we all have them. I would be surprised if we don't all have them at number 1 for the ACC, just with the depth and then the quality of just throughout the lineup. Mitchell Massey, I think if he starts, he's going to be a great starter, but being able to throw him out in a closer role, I think he would just shut down every game he goes in. His stuff is electric. I just don't understand the physics behind some of the stuff he throws. It's incredible. That entire lineup's incredible, and the ballpark is built for the roster they've assembled.
I'm okay if they keep Massey in the bullpen, right? Like, I think that's not a bad thing. He also would be a really good Sunday starter, but they're going to have to make that decision down the road here and see if anybody steps up in the spring camp here, getting ready to head into February ball. Noah, there's just so much like about this Wake Forest team. We all had them. They were unanimous number 1 for us. It wasn't even close. Tell us a little bit what you think about this Wake Forest team moving in here.
Well, every single name I wrote down came out of Monty's mouth pretty quickly. So he nailed it, but there's nobody I'm excited to watch more in probably the country than Seaver King. The buzz has been so palpable on him, and I'm glad to hear that Monty says he's going to live up to the hype. I would trust Monty with my life, so I'm certainly going to trust him with Seaver's potential here. It's a really, really exciting time to be a West Virginia, maybe a Wake Forest fan. Really, really looking forward to how they can rebound, because we all see what happens when a team has a great season and then the expectations crank up. So it'll be an interesting time to see how they handle that. But we've seen Wake Forest compete before, so I think they're ready for those challenges. And of course, it's pitching. Chase Burns is going to be really, really fun to watch, but so is this entire rotation. If you don't have Wake Forest penciled in Omaha right now, you should probably break out another pencil.
find a new job. It's funny you guys keep mentioning Seaver King. I literally listed him 3 times in a row. I wrote Seaver King, Seaver King, Seaver King. If we don't talk about him, we're missing big. He's going to be really, really good. At least we're all hoping he's going to be really, really good for this ball club here. So Wake Forest, number 1. That rounds out our top 14 there for you guys. We'll be putting that up on the website so everybody can see who we have 14 through 1. Really good, really close voting on a lot of this stuff, and we were all about the same page on most of it here. Let's move into the ACC Pitcher of the Year picks. Now, this can get controversial. I know that we've had a lot of issues on these. I want to know who you guys think is going to be the best pitcher of the year. Noah, I'm going to let you start on this one because your pick always seems to get taken.
That's true. It does seem to get taken, but I don't think it's going to be taken this time because I'm going to go a little bit of a unique route, which actually could, I guess, get me in trouble because then I would really be upsetting somebody. I'm going to go Josh Hartle. I know that's not a crazy reach, but you would think that Chase Burns is going to be the bell cow of that rotation, but I think Hartle's returning. He knows the ACC. He has some crazy stuff. He's competed in Omaha. I'm excited to watch him, even if he's not maybe the guy that everybody tunes in to watch. I think he has a chance to kind of sneak in and almost backdoor his way into an award full of talented arms in the ACC. There were a couple guys I thought about giving this nod to, but I could see Hartle taking that route.
It feels like this could be Hartle's award year, right? Like he could be the guy with Chase Burns there as well. Who knows? I mean, one of those guys could win it. There's a lot of ACC pitching that we've talked about Friday night, guys. Monty, who is your ACC Pitcher of the Year?
That's going to be tough. I'm thinking I want to go with a little bit of a dark horse here in Dominique Fritton out at NC State. I really like what he brings. It's his draft eligible year, and he was so good as a freshman. I think making that jump as a sophomore, he's gonna really take off.
I cannot believe you took Dominic Fritton and right underneath I had literally highlighted Dominic. I'm like, no one's gonna take this. He's cool, great, Dominic Fritton, good pick, smart guy there, Monty. AJ, who you got Pitcher of the Year in the ACC?
I mean, if no one else is going to go Chase Burns, I'll go Chase Burns. I mean, the guy with an electric fastball and a wipeout slider just gets introduced to a pitching lab for 6 months and gets acclimated with everything to fine-tune literally anything about his pitches. They're going to help him develop a third pitch, become a real weapon to where he's not just a 2-pitch guy, which kind of got him in trouble sometimes at Tennessee, especially in that ballpark. But and he's pitching for a potential top 5 pick as well. He's going to be trying to raise his draft stock the entire year. And that double-edged sword, you could be pitching with that extra pressure and that could go against you. But with that lineup and the talent around him, he's not going to have to be the guy. He will end up being the guy, but there's not the pressure on him to start the year of you have to carry this team.
Yeah, I think this almost feels like an MLB pro prep year for him, right? Like he's got to be that guy. And it could be too much pressure for him or it could be the right amount of pressure for him. But being at Wake Forest, I feel like it's a very good opportunity for him to build himself into a top 5 pick. I'm going to go a little bit out there now since Dom Fritton was taken from me. I do think that this guy also has the opportunity here. Duke pitcher Jonathan Santucci. This guy's got the ability, right? Left-handed pitcher is going to be the Friday night guy. If Duke goes anywhere, it's going to be on his left arm there. Moving forward, I think Jonathan Santucci is a big opportunity here to be ACC Pitcher of the Year. All right, we're going to move on to Coach of the Year. This is a big award. Monty, I'm going to let you start with this one because this one really could be almost a team award, but these coaches really have to step up.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Chris Pollard. Is that – yeah. Is Noah, is that who you're going to pick?
Yeah, you bet it was. He's going to Omaha.
You did say Coach K. Who earlier at the baseball school, so I figured you might do that. So I'm glad I got to go first. Yeah, I think Chris Pollard. I love Duke. I think, again, that pitching staff and what he was able to do last year, I think when Jonathan Santucci went down in March, I think everyone was like, okay, Duke's overachieved. They're done now. And they were 1 win away from Omaha again. And so I think this is the year. I wouldn't be surprised to see them get there. So that's Chris Pollard's my pick.
All right. I like where your head's at there. No, I'll let you go next now.
Oh,
since
thanks. Yeah.
Pollard taken right out for underneath.
Yeah. Well, I'm still going to stick with Chris Pollard. I'm not going to switch it up because he's going to coach in Omaha. He's got a good chance to win a national championship this year. If I see it going the way that I see Duke baseball headed, not much more to say. Give me Chris Pollard.
I like it. I think AJ's probably not going to go Chris Pollard, but I'm going to go on AJ next.
No, I'm not going Chris Pollard. I'm going with the new guy at Boston College, Todd Interdonato. I'm higher on Boston College than our poll suggests. I have them finishing 6th in the ACC, which will put them on fringe hosting conversation later on in the year. And that's just what Coach Interdonato does. He wins baseball games. He's coming off back-to-back 40-win seasons at Wofford. Probably should have been 2 at-large teams if they weren't playing in the SoCon. But all he does is win. Boston College, like you said, it's kind of going to be a team award. And if they're going to be in that position, Todd Interdonato is going to reap the benefits because they're not expected to be.
Yeah, no, I like that pick a lot. I think that incoming coaches always have a great opportunity to win this award if they can turn their team around and be great. Problem is that Boston College was pretty good last year, so it's not like they're all of a sudden going to be coming from the depths. This team was pretty good last year. I'm going to go Scott Forbes, and I feel like this is a make-or-break season with UNC, right? They have the talent. They have the ability. They really need to get back to Omaha, and I feel like this is a make-or-break year. Scott Forbes there at UNC. If he can get them to Omaha, he's a lock for Coach of the Year in the ACC, in my opinion. All right. So we have the next award, which is Newcomer of the Year in the ACC. So newcomer can be freshman or transfer. I know this is a tough award. People don't really love this because it used to be always freshman of the year. But now with all the transfers that come in and people coming from lower D1, we want to make sure that we get anybody included that's a newcomer to the ACC specifically. So newcomer of the year, AJ, I'm going to let you start with this one.
Yeah, even though I went Chase Burns with pitcher of the year, Seaver King to me is going to be their kind of the cornerstone. Nick Kurtz is he's gonna hit home runs. He's gonna hit for a good average. But Seaver King is gonna be the guy to make that offense go. He's gonna be dynamic all over the place as well as in the field. It's I just think having a guy like that play in D2 is a disservice to the country for a year. But he is incredibly fun to watch, and I just think he's gonna just take over college baseball.
We all believe it. We all hope that Seaver King is that guy. Noah, who do you got coming in as the newcomer of the year for the ACC?
Yeah, I'm going to go kind of an unprecedented route, and I'm going to say that Seaver King and Cam Leiter split the award.
Oh, okay.
I'm a big believer in what Cam's going to do at Florida State on the mound under Link Jarrett. And, of course, Seaver King is Seaver King. We might hype up Seaver King too much, but I don't think we can.
It may not be possible. Monty, who do you got for newcomer of the year?
I'm going to go a little bit under the radar here. I'm going to go with Garrett Pennington at NC State. He just looked so good at first base, coming and hitting the ball hard. Obviously, I could go Seaver King again, but I'm not going to do that. So I wanted to go a little bit under the radar, give us a little bit of diversity in our picks. So I'm going Garrett Pennington, NC State first baseman.
I like it. I also had Seaver King as one of my highlighted players, but I went another way here because I do believe if Scott Forbes wins this Coach of the Year at UNC, that Parks Harbor could be a big part of that. I think that him transferring in, he could be a 20 home run guy here in the ACC, and you're bringing that in. Playing third, maybe DH. They don't really know where they're going to put him. They're trying to figure out where they're going to put him because they're so loaded at the corner positions in the infield. But I think that Parks Harbor really makes a huge step forward for UNC. He could be a 20 home run guy. So I'm taking him as my newcomer of the year in the ACC.
If you want a freshman under the radar guy, because so many newcomers are transfers nowadays, Drew Burris. I know I mentioned him earlier out of Georgia Tech.
Yep.
I mean, the man hit 31 home runs in high school as a junior, and he's 5'9", 185. It is torque. It is bat speed. It is barrels all over the place. If Georgia Tech does anything special, it's going to be because of him, and he could very well work himself in that conversation.
I like it. I like it. Anybody else got a freshman dad that they want to add on there? Nope.
And the Stevenson from UNC, I think is gonna put up some numbers.
Yeah. Yep. I agree with that. I like that. Moving on, the big award, the Conference Player of the Year. Noah, why don't you get us fired up here with this Conference Player of the Year? Who you got?
I'm going to go with the easy pick here. Nick Kurtz, outstanding player. Feels like he leaves the yard every time he's at the plate. I'm sure that he is sick, that he missed the last game of the season against LSU due to whatever freak injury that was. Maybe was it something on his wrist? He took batting practice and then he didn't play in that game of the century. That's going to be a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. Give me Nick Kurtz.
Nick Kurtz is a great pick there. Monty, who you got? Player of the Year.
I'm going to go a little bit under the radar. I'm going to go with Cam Smith at Florida State. A lot of people, I think, picked him to be the freshman of the year last year. He had a really good freshman year, but nothing quite like what Cam Canarella did at Clemson and a couple other freshmen did. But I think he's going to have a monster year and end up as a top 20 draft pick.
I like it. I like it. AJ, ACC Player of the Year.
I am going to go with the first overall pick in the 2025 draft, and that is Cam Canarella out of Clemson.
Okay.
And he is, again, 5 tools. He's going to have protection from Will Taylor, who's devoted his entire career now to baseball. The man is just dynamic. He's an excellent center fielder. It seems like every time you give him a pitch near the zone, he's getting a barrel to it, and it's leaving at 95 plus. He is so much fun to watch. And if Clemson's going to finish second, it's going to be because he's hitting close to 400, probably 12 to 15 home runs, an electric center field. I mean, he could do what Vance Honeycutt did his freshman year, but with a better average, striking out less, and arguably playing better defense.
It's funny you mentioned Vance Honeycutt because that is my center fielder of choice and ACC Player of the Year. I think he comes back from that back injury. I think that he really steps up and leads this UNC team in all categories. This guy is a true 5-tool player. I'm really excited to see Vance Honeycutt this year. So he is my ACC Player of the Year. I believe that he is going to step up and be gigantic for this team. All right. We're diving into the questions, fellas. We're into the deep dive now. We've already gotten through all the fun stuff. The first one here that I like to pick, and I do this in every single preview show, is the dark horse team. Now, in the ACC, we've gone any team ranked from 6 to 14 in our own poll that I want you to pick for your dark horse to possibly win the ACC. That is in that 6 to 14 range. Good thing Jake's not here. I don't have to explain it multiple times to him. He can't keep taking Oklahoma State. But yes, 6 through 14. Monty, I'm going to let you start here with this. Who is your dark horse in the ACC?
I talked about it a little bit when we were previewing, but NC State with that pitching, the starters coming back, I really, really, really like that those 4 guys come back, and then the fact what they've done to add to their bullpen, and pitching, I think is what wins you championships. And I think that's NC State's actually got that this year. And I think if they can get just enough offense, and again, they've got Jacob Kozer behind the mound. I picked Garrett Pennington as my newcomer of the year. So we talked about Serrano and Souls. These are some really good pieces they brought in. I think they can really be a dark horse to win the ACC.
Absolutely. That's a fantastic pick there. AJ, why don't you lead us next here with this dark horse? I think I maybe know where you're going, but where are we going?
Well, I know I mentioned Boston College is kind of my underdog team, but to win, that's steep. I think you're going to look toward a team with a little bit more experience and bouncing back from tough seasons. And for there, I look at Louisville. I think we've never seen them have 2 really bad years in a row, and we've seen them bounce back from really bad seasons by their standards with really good seasons. And they're going to need another one here. But they have the ability to, wipe this clean as a program and just play ball. Last year, everything fell apart for them. It's hard to imagine it happens to them again. Not saying it couldn't, but if everything breaks the other way for them this year, Louisville could be, a contender for the ACC late in the year.
it felt like after they lost to that series to Miami that everything kind of collapsed around Louisville after that. They were so hot at the beginning of the season and then everything just kind of imploded on them. I really like that pick at Louisville there. They really do have a lot of question marks, but if they can get those answered, man, this team could be really good. Noah, who is your dark horse?
I'm going to go with Florida State. Let's
Yeah.
start that postseason streak back up. Cam Leiter, Cam Smith, James Tibbs. They have the pieces in place. They have a lot of talent down there. And I'm like we keep saying, I'm a big believer in Link Jarrett, and I don't think he's capable of having 2 down years in a row. His program, I want to see him lead it now. And Florida State has that pedigree. They know how to win.
You know, I also am going Florida State because I look at this and I go, to win that league, you have to have good coaching, you have to have good pitching, and I think that Florida State has that. They have the ability to do that. Link Jarrett is the kind of guy that could get this team to rally and win this conference. So I am going to go with Florida State as well. Good pick there, Noah. Leaning into that, Noah, can Link Jarrett get FSU to a title soonish? Are they even looking on the outside? When does this window open for Florida State?
At this point, I think a title is that one commercial with the, you got to be quicker than that they're just trying to grab it. And I don't know if it's going to be anytime soon. It's going to be a process. Florida State has to get those pieces in place. On a short-term basis, I'm going to say no. 3-4 years down the road, I think he's absolutely going to be in that conversation. He's one of the best coaches in America, in my opinion. He just has to get things rolling a little bit. I think Florida State had a little bit of a culture issue in that transition out of the Mike Martin era, whereas now it's Link's culture, and I'm excited to see where they go. But right now, no. But in a few years, absolutely. This Florida State program is going to be one where Link walks into my living room, I'm committing on the spot.
That's fair. I agree with you. I think that Florida State hired him to be the guy, not necessarily now, but to turn that program around, right? After Mike Martin left, there was really that lull with his son coaching. It really wasn't what they were hoping they would turn into. Florida State has never won an NCAA baseball title, which is just insanity when you look at that. But I do believe that that's why they hired Link Jarrett, was to go out there and get themselves their first College World Series title. Monty, I'm going to go to you here on this one. Is Duke a fraud or a contender? Because I don't know which way it's going to go this year for this Duke team.
I feel like I've answered this already, right? Yeah. I think they're a contender. Like we talked about what they went through last year with the pitching injuries and having to rely on a lot of guys getting experience and flourishing. I think that's going to pay dividends this year, and I think that's going to push them over the top. I think they are for real, and the transfers they got on the offensive side of the ball is going to do just enough. They've got some talented freshman hitters as well, and I'm really excited about Kyle Johnson, the two-way freshman who can pump on the mound and also hit and play some outfield. I'm a big fan of Duke's pitching, and I think that makes them contenders, especially if Fran O'Shell can make that transition to the rotation and bring that dominance that he showed at the back end of the rotation last year. He's an absolute stud.
I 100% agree with you. In my brain, sometimes it feels like somebody's going to pull the rug out on my love for Duke this year at some point in the season, and I'm going to fall on my face. I do hope that they cleared their schedule and have that ballpark ready for hosting this year, just in case they're out there ready to go. I'm really excited for this Duke ball club, but I'm with you. I think that they're a contender. I don't want to be that guy that trips and falls when somebody pulls that rug out from underneath me. AJ, Clemson has been on a roll now, right? Then they were hot last year. Do they keep this rolling? Are we too high on them, or is this really the number 2 team in the ACC?
I mean, it's hard to look at them and think of them as overrated at this point. Yes, they're behind a good Wake Forest team, but Wake Forest is number 1 in this conference for a reason. But who else in the ACC would you put above a Clemson team that has so many guys who have proved it? And I think last year they were actually ahead of schedule. I think especially to start the year, you didn't think many of them you didn't think they'd be hosting a regional. Even, 3 weeks into the year when they're around 500, you didn't think that. And then they just go on a massive win streak. just relying on their pure talent, which they return a lot of. And now you have guys who know how to win, feel like they ended last year on a sour note and want revenge, and they entirely have a roster capable of playing the kind of baseball they want to play. It fits their style of play. They are going to be a national force, and no one's going to want to play Clemson. It's not going to be like, I want to go to Clemson's regional, like maybe Tennessee was excited to go play there. There's going to be none of that this year. It's going to be, oh God, we have to play Tigers and purple and orange. It's going to be a grind for whoever they play every single weekend.
Gotcha. So we're taking absolutely no Clemson slander this year. We are fully on board on this Clemson ball club. I love it. I think it's good when Clemson's good at baseball. I think it's really good for the college baseball landscape when the ACC is talented, and I really like the direction that this whole conference is moving. Noah, speaking of national landscape, where does UNC fit in there anymore? I know we've been there to the College World Series. They've lost some titles. They've never won one either. Where do they fit now in the national landscape?
The reality is that they returned some great pieces, and it's now kind of their make or break year with Honeycutt and Ozuna. But that pitching is just always worrisome on Chapel Hill. We saw them as a 3 seed last year. This was a team that we felt like they were a 2 seed, but either way, the committee viewed them as a 3. They were theoretically somewhere near that bubble, whether they in all actuality were or not. That's where they were ranked by the committee. So this is a team that has a lot of question marks around them. I know that we're pretty high on them as a unit, but we can see that potential for them to kind of fall out a little bit. Vance has a lot of pressure on him this year to kind of rise up back to where he was as a freshman while also reducing that strikeout rate. And Ozuna is just going to hit the ball. But the question is, who's going to get outs for this team? And do they have kind of that secret sauce that we saw in some other players that they've lost, like Tomas Frick, as Monty mentioned earlier?
Yeah, I hate to say that they probably lost a little bit of their luster as far as the national committees combined, and looking at this team being a 3 seed last year and really struggling. I'd like to see them take a big step forward and possibly be in that hosting category. That's what I expect to see from UNC this year, but I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm hoping Scott Forbes is a guy that I think he can be for this ball club, and I hope that they have a really successful season. But a lot of it's going to come down to pitching, and if they don't have the weekend rotation guys, it's really going to be tough. AJ, another team that I've been really high on, you've been high on, Miami. Do we love or hate them in 2024? How do we feel about this Miami ball club?
I love them to be in the hosting conversation late in the year, probably end up as a 2 seed somewhere, and then be one of the most trending picks to either make a run to Omaha or be 2 in barbecue. It seems like that's what they do every year. They have so much talent that we see, and then it just never materializes during the postseason. It seems like it hasn't in a long time. But as for if I had to do pick'ems against a lot of teams that Miami plays on the schedule, I have them winning a lot of series right now. Of course, haven't seen them play, don't know who the guys are healthy or who aren't healthy yet, but they are. It is a true love-hate relationship. But I think we're going to see a lot of good baseball played in South Florida at a very poorly lit ballpark. But it is – I love Miami early, and I will love them until they give me a reason not to love them, which might be week 2 in the season.
For me, it's every single week I pick them because then they let me down, and every time I lose picks on them every single weekend. I do love this Miami team. I think that they have enough talent. Gage Seal, if they get into the playoffs – he is a legit contender to keep this team rolling and be the Friday night ace of this ball club and really be great in postseason play. I hope that they have enough pieces. I do love this Miami team this year. I'm hoping that 2024 is the year where they don't go 2-Q in their own regional again. Monty, Virginia, are they a viable Omaha candidate, or are we still just kind of falling on the love of this Virginia ball club?
Listen, I think UVA is always a viable Omaha candidate with Brian O'Connor in charge. Only Florida has been to more College World Series appearances since 2009. So you can never quite count them out. But as we talked about earlier, while their lineup is still going to be really, really good, the question is those freshman pitchers from last year coming in as sophomores, are they going to be able to take that step forward and carry this team into Omaha? And it's really just going to come down to, we see it every year, who's hot at the end of the season. If Virginia can set themselves up and finish strong, they're going to be in that conversation for Omaha. But it's a very different team from last year. They'd have to have a little bit of a different, find different ways to win.
Yeah, it's like you said, those 5 freshmen are now sophomores. So they got 5 sophomores that they're going to have to mix in the weekend rotation and figure out who they're going to have and who's going to start, who's going to step up. And that's the key for this Virginia ball club, especially in the ACC, is can they get the outs? They have good, solid talent in the hitting side. They're very talented. I'm concerned about the outs. Can they get the outs? Because that's the hard part about getting to Omaha also is pitching. You have to have a pretty deep staff that's really experienced. Now, they got a lot of opportunities last year, so it's really good for them this year moving forward. I'm just kind of surprised here for this one. AJ, I got one more question for you before we get to our final thoughts. Vautech, we were so high on them last year. Are they just due for a giant step back this year in 2024? Kind of feels that way.
I think if we look at last year was kind of return to earth for them. I mean, They finished well below 500 in the ACC. Yeah. It was like 12-17 because they had a game canceled due to weather. And I think we're going to see, not a collapse from that, but probably a repeat just based off the overall talent. Yes, they have Carson DiMartini, who is a very, very good player, going to be top 2 talent round type of guy. But there's just so much talent in the ACC that I think Virginia Tech they're in a rough spot for the next couple of years, especially this year. I think you're going to see a team whose record will be above 500 overall, but the ACC will be around 12-18, 13-17, something like that.
Yeah, I really wonder how this team bounces back, right? Because I just don't see it. I don't see this team being elite this year. I don't see them making that step, and they don't have the pitching to really do so. And 2 years ago, we were talking about this darling Vautech team that was out there hammering that sledgehammer into the ground and being all excited. It feels like that is gone. It feels like this is a lackluster performance again. I'm with you. I feel like this team is not where we want them to be moving forward. Everybody, I got one question for you guys here. I'm gonna let Noah start on this one here. Does Wake Forest have enough to be considered the number 1 team in the nation moving into week 1 of the season? Noah, do you think Wake Forest is the number 1 team in the club?
At this moment, I do have Wake Forest ranked number 1. I will say that we sent out polls to a majority of the country, and of the results we've gotten so far from roughly 20 programs, a vast majority of them still rank LSU as the number 1 team. I personally have Wake Forest ranked higher. We just went over their tool shed that they have. The pitching is revamped. They still have all the talent on offense. I think Wake Forest is almost easily number 1.
Monty, do you have Wake as the number 1 team in the country currently?
Yes.
Okay.
I thought that'd be funny. I agree with everything Noah said. I really like what they've brought, and it's going to be between them and then somebody in the SEC. So once we get closer, I think it'll be easier for you to really feel confident about that. But right now, Wake Forest is my number 1 seed.
That's fair. AJ, do you have Wake? I know you've got the hat on.
Yeah, and it does seem like it comes down to either them or LSU. But if you do just a comparison of the rosters and who is coming back, who is transferring in, and who has proven that they can succeed on that stage, I just have to give the edge to Wake Forest. It is, they have so many guys, just high-end dudes. And LSU does as well, but you have Tommy White and then some guys who you're hoping build on seasons from the previous year, or guys like, Michael Braswell, who you're hoping transfer in to do something that they didn't do at their previous school. Well, Wake Forest, Wake Forest, you got guys who succeeded at that school, or you're hoping to just come over and did what they did previous year. It is unreal what Wake Forest has on that roster. If the front three starters stay healthy, then I think you're looking at maybe a wall-to-wall number one team throughout the year.
Yeah, it does come down to LSU versus Wake Forest for me. And in my mind, I really think that Wake Forest has the better starting pitching. And I think that is really what's going to push them over the edge, right? They're going to be the number one team because their starting pitching is just a little bit better than what LSU is going to be bringing this year. And that lineup is just a little bit better, but it's close. But I am going to go as Wake Forest as my number one team also when my first poll comes out. Any final thoughts here, fellas? Monty, I'm going to let you start because you're our ACC guy, residency. Any final thoughts on the ACC this year before we move into next week's season of the SEC?
I mean, I talked about it a little bit earlier when I first started talking, I think, about Virginia Tech, but I think I'm pretty confident Wake Forest at 1, Pitt at 14, but then from 2 to 13, I think it's completely wide open, even though we talked about some of the question marks for some of the teams lower on that list. I think anybody, if they can just get some of those questions answered in a positive way, can make a run. So it's wide open. The other thing I want to bring up is Jake and I, and possibly some of you guys, if you're interested, we're going to be doing ACC previews starting the first week of January, where we be deep diving for the 7 weeks, 2 teams a week going into the regular season. We'll be doing deep dives on each of these teams. So even though we discussed these teams briefly in this, we're going to be doing a lot more deep diving as we get closer to the season.
Yeah, I'm excited for those, and we'll post those links out when they come out. But every week, you guys are going to be doing at least 2 teams, and it's going to be at least you and Jake and possibly others here doing the shows and making sure that we get a deep dive on all those rosters. We're really excited for ACC play this year. I'm really excited for it. I mean, I don't know if this is the year they jump over SEC, but I'm really hoping that this is the year that's close again like it was last year. Noah, any final thoughts?
Yeah, we're coming up on the third season of doing these shows, and every year is this the year the ACC jumps the SEC? And at the end of the year, the SEC always gets the last laugh, whether it's just a regular dog pile or a game of the century getting us to that point. I don't know if this is the year, but I do think that Wake Forest has the opportunity to pave the way for this conference to cakewalk to a national championship if everything clicks for that team. Don't want to jinx them or anything. But it's going to be a great year for the ACC. The question is, can they get over that effect that it seems like one team wins one week and then they get swept the next? It feels like that happens tumultuously throughout the ACC calendar. I want to see some teams be consistent and say, we're going to dominate this league, even if the other teams aren't okay with that.
Yeah, I think it's nail on the head right there, right? Because there's weeks where you look at a team that's second, and then they go out there and they lose to the 10th ranked Boston College. It's going to be interesting to see what happens this year, especially in the ACC. AJ, final thoughts on this ACC?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to flip a question to everybody else. Out of the 14 teams, how many do you think we see get a regional berth?
Oh, man, a regional berth? So, like, going just teams that make the tournament, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
9. I feel like 9, a solid 9 get in.
I'll go next. I was thinking heading into the program that we could theoretically have 9 different teams winning this league without too much objection, so that feels like a very safe number. I'm going to go a little bit higher and say 10.
Cool. Monty?
I mean, the two best numbers were chosen, so I'm gonna go with 9.5. No, no, I think
over under. I like it. I like the over under being said 9.5.
I do like 9 is if I was being more confident, but 10 since maybe somebody really slips in there at the very end, that a bubble team, if they're not NC State, because if they are NC State, they'll probably get left out. But if it's not NC State, that 10th team might get in.
Yeah, I just think we need to finally see the respect that a lot of SEC teams get. 14 and 16 conference record SEC teams get in, but we haven't seen that shared with the ACC. If that is, we could be pushing that 10 number for sure. I think 9 is definitely safe. I think 8 is all but guaranteed, just with the quality in that conference. But it's I would go 10 if I had to place an over under on 9.5. I'd take the over. Just with it's such a good conference, and you're pushing. Teams have challenged the SEC before for best conference, but I think you could make a very strong argument that the ACC is a much deeper conference than the SEC talent-wise this year.
And last year, like I said, that ACC out of conference schedule, they performed better than the SEC did out of conference last year as a whole. And the top end teams in the SEC might have been just slightly above what we were seeing there in the ACC top end. But I believe that this year it's leveled out quite a bit, and I think that the ACC is right there. I'm excited for this ACC season. I think that there's a lot of great storylines we're going to be watching. There's a lot of good transfers in, a lot of good freshmen, a lot of good returning players. So check it out. Monty's going to be doing those deep dives every week starting in January, doing 2 teams a week until the start of the season. We're really excited. Next week, we're going to be doing the SEC preview show, which I know a lot of folks are excited about, doing that SEC preview show next week. Same time, we're going to be starting that show out. Again, thanks for joining us here at College Baseball Central. I've been joined by Noah Darling, Monty Taylor, and AJ Sessions. Thanks for having us, fellas. We'll see you again next week.